PowerPoints, power lunches, conference calls, reply to all, endless meetings, constant check-ins, and so much wasted time. Are you sick of the BS? So are we. It's time to take our time back, rework the way we work, and make every call a call to action. This is a podcast for people who want to stop talking and really start connecting. This is After 12. Hi, Internetlandia. My name is Adam Voss, and you're watching the After 12 podcast series. This is our hit series following 12for12.com about the making of and the insights we've learned from each of these episodes. And as always, with me today is my fearless co-host and co-cheese, Mr. Josh Rush.
Clinky, Adam.
Hi, Josh.
Clinky. Yeah. Cheers.
Clinky. And today, our podcast, as always, is sponsored by Echelon Design, the best for your exhibits, events, and digital media, not to mention strategy. And that, with a beer in my hand, means we're talking about what, Josh?
Goose Island.
Goose Island.
The last episode of season 1. That was a great episode.
Goose Island beer. Founded in 1988, Goose Island has established itself as really Chicago's premier craft brewery, becoming really one of the coolest places to visit in Chicago.
Well, not just that they are like the premier, but they were really the first major craft, or micro brew, if you will, that kind of ascended to, mainstream and ultimately through its acquisition, which is what we're really going to be talking about today. As much about Goose Island as it is about how do brands who are scaling or companies that are scaling maintain that sense of cool that for these guys a cool factor that made them so widely adopted when they were in their craft kind of brewing infancy.
So Goose Island was founded in 1988 by John Hall, who is a Chicagoan who really just wanted to create beer. He had traveled the world.
He's a beer lover.
Beer lover.
Okay.
He had traveled the world. He had tasted a lot of different beer, and he came back to Chicago with all these ideas. And, he had no experience distilling, brewing, any of that. But he left his corporate career behind, and he got into really what became the first major craft brewery in Chicago. I mean, this is 1988. I mean, this was like the year you were born, Josh. And
I'd only just begun drinking at that age. I was 4.
You probably did.
I was 4.
Goose Island was founded by John Hall after a fateful trip across Europe inspired him to bring craft brewing to his hometown of Chicago.
There hadn't been a brewery in Chicago that produced beer for many, many years when John decided to open it. People thought he was crazy.
He had no experience in brewing. He had no experience in the restaurant business, and he put a business plan together, got some investors, and opened up the Goose Island Beer Company on Clybourne, still standing strong today.
This is from beveragedaily.com. I'm saying there are 6,655 active craft breweries in the United States.
500 barrels a day Goose Island produces. And what's great about their whole brand is they don't rest on their laurels. They are constantly innovating, which, if you've had a Goose Island beer, you've probably been exposed to its 312 or its Green Line, which is a more IPA. But then they also have some really great Saisons. They've got their Matilda and what's the other one that's really...
I'm more of the Green Line. I'm definitely not more of an IPA drinker than I am like the fruitier beers, the Saisons and whatnot. But I guess for when you say that Goose Island has this culture, spirit of innovation, and what we're really talking about is how does a company like Goose Island, which was really kind of first to market with regards to craft beers. And most recently acquired by Anheuser-Busch, how do they maintain that sense of, the part about the brand that built them? This is, with craft beers. I mean, they're here in Atlanta, I'm sure, I don't know about Palm Springs. I can't imagine the craft beer market in Palm Springs is huge, but you're going to be in Portland soon and it will be huge there. That there are so many different microbrews popping up, and the flavor profiles for these beers, whether it is IPAs have been big for a long time, but people are kind of even reverting back to the basics like Pilsners. So there's just so much competition. How does, there's a Creature Comforts in Athens just up the road where you went to school. They're probably, one of the I guess, hottest beer makers here in the Atlanta market. Their Tropicalia is really a killer IPA that's hard to beat. And I would opt for Creature Comforts over Goose Island because Goose Island to me is kind of, well, they're bigger. It's like they're more widely distributed. So I shy away from Goose. And that's
Right.
that's really the challenge and kind of what we're talking about is at what point is there a shift in the market where I'm not drinking their beer, but there are more, what would be Budweiser or Bud Light, drinkers that are shifting into, more of the Goose space? Or is it that Goose is still trying to reach, the crowd that's drinking the Anti-Hero or, Creature Comforts here in Atlanta?
Right. Well, let's take a step back. So when Goose was actually acquired in 2011, the thing that made them so different and really a model for other, small brewers is that they retained complete control of their product creation and really their branding. So I mean, they've done some really different things. Let's talk about their barrel house. The year is 2016. Why are we still using wood barrels for storing your beer?
It imparts unique characters that you don't get anywhere else.
So you're using bourbon casks?
Yeah, we use bourbon casks for our Bourbon County Aged Stout. And then we also have our 5 sour sisters that we age in wine casks. But part of it's so that we get a more neutral oak character. We also get a bunch of growth of different microorganisms, and that's where the souring comes in.
What's unusual about just the way they have set up an R&D and innovation lab within their main facility, it's really in the South Loop of Chicago's downtown area, and they've created a tasting room, a tap room within that, so you can go and you can tour the facility, which is pretty ginormous. I mean, the facility's got to be like, 2 city blocks or 3 city blocks. It's huge.
It's big, yeah. But to put it in comparison, right? I just looked this up on the interweb. So it was back in 2011 was when Anheuser-Busch acquired. They already had a pretty significant stake in the company, but they announced that they were going to take basically the remaining 58% for $38.8 million deal, which is, for a small business, that's a great deal. But in the grand scheme of things, Anheuser Beverage.
You're just thinking, how do I sell this company?
Anheuser-Busch InBev is a $56.44 billion company. That was revenue in 2017. So
pebble rippling on a small pond.
But so right. I mean, it's they are just that. It's and for craft breweries though, like specifically in Chicago, Goose is it. They were the biggest ones, and yet it was only a $38.8 million acquisition.
Well, I mean, what differentiates Goose Island? I mean, more so than their different flavor profiles of their beers. Their beers, I mean, they have a truly bespoke product that's like constantly changing. They archive beers, bring new beers up. They have their staples. They have their their 312, and they've got their Green Line, and they've got their Grumpy Old Man, and they've got certain beers that they keep all year round. But I mean, it's a beer by beer lovers for beer lovers. So they're constantly trying new things, getting new tastes. I mean, right now, one of the big things in beer is sour beers.
Anytime you're trying a new beer, you kind of want to go through a progression. You hold it up, look at it. What do you notice in this beer?
The light refracting through the glass. It's got a really cool color.
It's a little hazy. Then the next thing you do is you want to smell it.
I smell citrus. I smell
fresh grass.
Oh, yeah.
So then we're going to taste it. And when we taste it, just hold it in your mouth for a little bit longer than you usually would.
Man, that is good.
Yeah.
When John Hall founded Goose, I mean, he didn't know much about anything. He had no restaurant experience, just genuine passion, enthusiasm for beer. So that is the main tenet running the company today. So they love beer. That's it. It's like you and I love talking. That's what we're doing.
Talking about marketing, and we're drinking again.
Right.
Yeah.
According to a 2014 report from Deloitte, formerly Deloitte and Touche, 88% of employees don't have a passion for their work and therefore don't contribute to their full potential. And I think, this is a great representation of the 12% of people that absolutely love what they do, probably because it is emotionally and spiritually intoxicating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just reading an article in the Tribune from this was dated in March 29 of last year, and it's basically getting at some of what we kind of projected or what issues we thought they might have with regards to Goose. They have had they had a tough year back. 2017 was a tough year. Sales fell off, and it is tricky, right? It's challenging to think how do we continue to embrace that entrepreneurial spirit or that culture of innovation, which created the company, right? That this is what made them attractive to acquisition back in 2011, and fight off really all the kind of asymmetrical competition that is whoever's got a better brew and kind of jives better with the hipster crowd is going to be the thing that I drink and at Butcher and Brew up the street here. How do they continue to do it? Because they have definitely maintained since having a tough year. They've really bounced back. I know they hired a new agency last year as well, just to kind of help reshape and redefine their message, which is getting back to the core of who they are and what built them. So that spirit of innovation, right? Those types of collaboration. We featured on our show, and we actually did a special on it. The collaboration with Killer Mike, an Atlanta-based rapper, and his band, if you will, Run the Jewels.
Yeah. I mean, so a big part of innovation is collaboration, and not just with outside partners, but inside. And their current brewmaster, Jared Jankowski, who's hysterical. We had a great conversation with. I mean, they really put a high priority on research and development, and they actually do it in a kind of gamification way where they pair off into teams and they create their own best brew with the kind of chemistry team. The brewer team pairs off with the marketing team and the branding team, and they come up with a full concept. So not just your beer and the flavor and the barley, the hops and all of the different components of the beer ingredients, but they also look at kind of like, the visual identity, the logoing, the graphics, how it would sell, what season it would sell.
Right.
Is this a summer ale? Is this a more of a winter stout? What do they do with it? And then they have a competition internally.
And that's the thing, right? I mean, so obviously the most, I know that the people that work for Goose Island love the beer. They're beer people. You got to live, breathe it, want to be a part of it. So I got a phone call coming in canceling. But they, so they appreciate their employees and they encourage them to participate in this constantly innovating, right? They're in a constant state of what you say this oftentimes, Adam, where it's evolution and innovation, right? So it's like they're constantly trying to change and evolve and innovate, and that really kind of gets to this other point of like, remembering your roots, right? When you're small and you're scrappy, and you're fighting, to try and build something, like there are no bad ideas. It's that kind of adopt a why the hell not, policy that allows you to just take chances, and that's what people connect with, I think, and so that's how Goose is continuing to try and foster and promote that kind of environment in their workplace, which is going to breed innovation.
So this is our innovation room. But this room is kind of a playpen for the brewers, and that'd be a space for the brewers to come in and work on whatever they want to work on. So we have kind of a variety of different barleys that they can play with. We have some caramel malt. So you have your grain, you have your barley, and then water obviously is mixed into it. And the other ingredient you're going to use is going to be hops. So let's say we want to use this as an aromatic hop, and a good way to get a test where you can actually kind of rough it up a little bit and then give it a good smell.
Well, and they've gone even farther. I mean, they actually have a position on staff. They have a brewery innovations manager, a guy by the name of Mike Siegel, who runs the competition, who takes the winner of this competition every year and actually creates a new category, a new product. So, this game that they play internally to see what new products, they could come up with, they actually take at least one of those every year and they launch it and see how it does commercially. So that is truly what I would say is embracing a spirit of innovation. The other thing is, hiring like-minded people. Like if you're on a journey, you love what you're doing, it's all about your passion. You got to find other people that are passionate about your passion.
At Echelon, we call that crew love.
Crew love.
You got to have
exactly.
crew love.
Don't be on the team if you don't want to play the game. Truly, to find something else. Find something that you love. And I think with Goose Island, John started a very kind of like, out of left field idea after touring Europe and said, I'm going to start my own beer company, and got people around him that were equally passionate about beer.
And the story's, I guess still being told here. We don't really know how it's going to end. I mean, I do wonder, really and truly. I mean, they're going to grow and they'll be a part of that Anheuser-Busch family. But will they, be able to do these things well enough so that people, still remember, the roots basically of the first time they had a Goose Island, Green Line IPA, or is it that this is just a fickle market that's always going to be kind of in love with the next, new thing?
Well, as long
I'm not sure.
until the demise of the human species, I think alcohol will be foremost in the way that in which we sublimate the pains, the trials and tribulations of being human. And so I don't think they'll ever have a shortage of interest and a lack of sales. I just think the problem is it's a competitive marketplace when it comes to other types of ethanol-based inebriants like wine sales or spirit sales. So it's interesting that you matched a market decline of beer in 2017 when there was a significant rise in spirits. Why is that? I mean, you and I, dandies going to bars all over the world, we order cocktails and not beer. And I think one of the reasons we order cocktails and not beer is because beer is, the additional fat we don't need. You know what I mean? Like truly, that's got to be a big part of it for me.
Yeah. I mean, I think so too. There's potency over over volume,
Calorie,
and or potency over calorie, volume over calorie. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do, and watching others. Here in Atlanta, and this is always, there's no short supply of people that we could talk to about this same issue, which is Sweetwater Brewing Company, which would be, I guess, the equivalent of Goose Island in Chicago. To Atlanta, Sweetwater was the first microbrew to really kind of make it to more mainstream adoption. They're distributed, I know in Chicago and elsewhere. But then you've got these newer breweries again, like Creature Comforts or Variant, and we've got, what's the other one? I'm trying to think. There's a Roswell and Woodstock, some really killer breweries, man, and they've all got great, the branding. It's like I wish we could have a microbrewery or a distillery to be able to brand these labels, because they're so compelling. They really are so compelling, and the story that goes along with it is such that it's going to be difficult to stave off that kind of competition. Because people are the same things that built Goose Island are the same kinds of basic motivators that are driving innovation elsewhere, and so it will be interesting to see.
In addition to having like innovation as part of your brand, having the great team of people that like want to be on this same
Yeah.
mission with you. I mean, the other thing is really giving back to the employees and appreciating their ideas. So, again, I point to the innovation competition that they have every year, and the fact that they will promote a beer that that their employees make as kind of a fun project.
And so, I guess I wonder what kind of resources they devote to that, both, hard costs or soft costs, if you will, time. And how would you suggest, or how would we begin to suggest other companies take that same approach, right? Because if you're a small shop, you got mouths to feed. If you're a larger company, you've got a lot of, bean counters kind of driving, decisions. But you have to have that ability to give people a chance to just, ideate, think, concept. How can we, skin the cat differently?
It is all about engendering an entrepreneurial workplace. Like, truly, if you don't own what you make, in the sense that you're not compensated or celebrated for the contributions you give to a company, then you're going to leave. How do you create beers that people want to drink?
I think you start as a beer lover. Then you're just doing what you and your fellow beer lovers enjoy. We're all here because we love beer.
We got people on their free time who are chefs, gardeners, musicians, people who
Are makers.
they're makers.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things that ties us all together is that we all have a certain level of pride for what we do every day and for what we represent.
We talked about embracing a spirit of innovation. We talked about hiring people that believe in the message and believe in the mission, so passionate people. And we talked about really employing and appreciating the ideas of the people that you work for or work with.
Well, I think we should, if we could get our act together long enough to organize some sort of outreach. I'd love to hear from people who are watching the show, their opinion. Maybe it's a simple poll or survey that we could say, if given the choice between drinking a Miller Lite, a Goose Island Green Line IPA, or a Revolution Anti-Hero, what would they choose and why? And I guess, again, the nexus of this is, will Goose Island be able to retain or maintain that sense of, entrepreneurialism, that sense of craft that built the brand, or will they go the way of, kind of just being absorbed into the larger Anheuser-Busch family?
So all of you out there in internet land, do us and our fledgling podcast a favor. We want to hear from you, even if we don't care what you say. There's no bad ideas in brainstorming.
None whatsoever. Adam, thank you.
Josh, thank you. From all of us here at 12 for 12 and our After 12 podcast, we bid you a fair adieu and a hearty cheers. Cheers, Josh.
Salute.
Salute.